Welcome to On Call, Paging the Frontlines of the Future, a podcast powered by Project Unity. I'm Hargan Satchar, your host, and a proud member of Project Unity, a student-led initiative transforming how we talk about healthcare. At Project Unity, we believe meaningful health innovation begins by listening, not just to professionals, but to young people living and leading within today's health systems. This podcast brings youth into dialogue with experts across medicine, public health, and digital health to explore real stories, pressing challenges, and bold ideas, reshaping health equity in schools, clinics, and communities. Whether you're a student leader, an educator, or a healthcare professional, you are in the right place. This is where emerging voices and experienced minds come together to reimagine the future of health. Today, we're honored to welcome a leader at the forefront of health innovation and truth in medicine, Michael Walsh. He's a Harvard-trained medtech investor, social entrepreneur, and public health advocate, and serves as a co-founder of A Dose of Truth, an initiative using AI-powered video, animation, and chatbots to combat health misinformation. By combining trusted messengers, culturally adaptive storytelling, and cutting-edge technology, A Dose of Truth is reimagining how we communicate evidence-based care and empower communities to resist harmful narratives. Michael, it's a true privilege to have you join us today. To begin, could you share a little bit about your journey into health innovation and what inspired your mission to bring truth and technology together in combating misinformation?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I would like to say that I've been focused on the healthcare technology since I was a high school student. And I remember when I was taking a chemistry class and we watched an episode of Nova on PBS, and it was about a company developing a new drug with a new technology. The new drug was a human protein called interferon. And the company was working on a new technology called biotechnology. And this was about 5 years after genetic engineering technology had been invented. And as soon as I watched that, I knew that I wanted to be a part of that revolution. And I've spent the rest of my life really focusing on the biotechnology revolution, specifically as it relates to human healthcare. So I spent my career as an investor of that technology, helping companies bring products to market. The way that I got to this particular place is that during the pandemic, it was very obvious to me that we had a very serious problem with misinformation. And there's a general anti-science feeling going on in the United States for sure, and I believe around the world. And the best estimates are that the lack of belief of things like a COVID vaccine led to around 300,000 unnecessary deaths. And so that is just a mind-staggering figure that so many people could have been misled into their own deaths by a lack of good tools to bring them around and teach them about the truth. And about a year and a half ago, I was applying to a fellowship at the University of Chicago that is focused on leadership and society. And one of the essay questions in the application was, what world problem keeps you up at night? And I thought, oh, that's easy. It's medical misinformation, because the way it occurred to me is that there are a number of us, maybe 2, 3, 4% of the public, who through training and work experience speak the language of medicine. Now, I'm not a trained physician. I never went to medical school, but in investing in medical technologies, I had to learn about every disease and every treatment, and the causes for them, and the way that the diseases play out. So it's like I went to medical school without going to medical school. And especially during the pandemic and listening to all of the misinformation, I realized that most people do not speak enough of the language to be able to differentiate between truth and lies. And therefore, it is incumbent upon those of us who do speak the language and can determine instantaneously whether something is true or false to find a way to get that truth out to the world, and not let those who use big words incorrectly convince people of things that are just not true. So I was accepted into that fellowship program, and the point of the program is to spend a year thinking about different world problems and ways to solve them. and to build a plan for a specific solution to a specific problem. And I could never get that idea of targeting medical misinformation out of my head. And so I decided early on that that was going to be my focus. So that's how we got here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So, we'll go a little bit deeper into your professional journey and leadership philosophy. Your career spans investment, entrepreneurship, and public health. I know you talked a little bit about what intrigued your interest in combating medical misinformation, but what experiences shaped the way that you think about leadership and the kind of problems that you've chosen to solve?
Well, I've been involved in many organizations trying to make a difference in the world. I first got involved with public health because I met the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health back in about 2000, 25 years ago. And he sort of took me under his wing and taught me a lot about what happens in the world of public health. And he asked me to join an executive council there where a group of business executives would come together and talk with faculty and hear about what research was going on and together come up with ideas about how to be ambassadors to the world for that research. So I considered myself a public health ambassador for 25 years now. And of course, what I'm doing now is a continuation of that effort. I'm constantly trying to come up with ideas to change the world, to save the world. And one of the things I've learned in my life is that it's very difficult to up with good ideas that make a difference anywhere. So, I mostly was working with other people and their ideas. So one of them was a nonprofit that we founded about 12 or 13 years ago to combat iron deficiency anemia in women and girls in sub-Saharan Africa, because there's an endemic problem of iron fortified iron deficiency anemia. And so our idea was to fortify tomato paste, which is a staple of their diet, with iron so that that could be a quick and easy way every day to get an increase in iron in the diet. And we actually worked with an Indian company that had plants in, I think it was Ghana, and we got a product approved. But unfortunately, it's been very difficult because this is such a narrow problem, very difficult to raise the funding necessary to prove our point that these iron fortified products are safe and effective. So I've been trying to attack various problems in the world of public health and in education and other ways in general for many years. And it's just something that I feel I need to do because I've been so lucky in my life. I really need to give back to the world and in response for all of the great things that have been given to me in my life. And then really just about a year ago, in being in a especially intellectual environment and having a bunch of very smart people around me, two of us banded together to work on this problem. And what we realized is that I had some solutions to the problem and she had some other solutions to the problem. And in looking into the process of innovation, one of the things I've learned is that rarely does one person come up with an innovation. It is usually built upon someone else's ideas. And it's these ideas that are coming together at the right time that allowed for the innovation to happen. So I'm not sure the innovation itself is not leadership. I think that's just something that you just have to work very hard at and find the right people and come up with ideas. And like I said earlier, it's very difficult because most ideas are not very good. I would say that I was really shocked when Catherine and I came up with the ideas we're going to discuss later in this podcast. And normally I'll come up with an idea and I'll start telling people about it. And within hours or days, they will tell me all the problems with the idea and why it won't work. And we are now 10 months into me telling people about this idea, and not one person has been able to tell us why it won't.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And we can tell that you're clearly so heavily emotionally invested as well in this idea of combating health misinformation. So we know that misinformation can be emotional and fast moving. How do you balance the rigor and science with accessibility and empathy when engaging with the
Well,
public?
the empathy with the public really comes from my partner, Catherine. And she spent her career with the British Broadcasting Corporation and a nonprofit. And she spent the last 20 years of her career developing animated videos to teach people in third world countries about various medical issues that are hard to understand. And through the work that they did, they learned that animations are a very good way of empathetically bringing complex messages to people. So that was really her contribution to this issue. My contribution was on the back end about how to bring it to market, which I guess we'll discuss later. And it was during our research we learned about the concept of chatbots to be able to allow people to have conversations with an infinitely adaptable and infinitely patient source that has all of the world's knowledge embedded in it. And so the empathy comes from the combination of the avatars that we use that give the preliminary message, and then giving the people the ability to have a very respectful conversation. And all of this comes from the underlying research, which shows that animations are actually a better way of getting complex information, health information across to many people, because they don't like being lectured to by doctors and nurses or their uncle or their mother for that matter. And people love cartoons, and a cartoon is just much easier to accept as a tutor about a complex subject. And so the data are coming out now that the same is true of a chatbot. And the way to think about it is if you're having a conversation with someone who believes some false ideas, there is a power imbalance. And that power imbalance means that the person who's trying to do the changing of minds is of higher stature in the relationship. And the person who's lower in stature does not like being the lower person in the status hierarchy. And so, therefore, they will tune out and they will turn off their attention because they don't want to be in that particular situation. So, what we've done is we've taken an emotionless machine and turned that into the tutor. And people just don't have the same kinds of responses that they do when they're talking to people. So, paradoxically, we are being empathetic by using technology instead of humans.
Great, thank you so much. And now we'll go a little bit deeper into your organization, Building a Dose of Truth. So I know you mentioned a little bit about why you created Health Misinformation and as an organization, but what gap did you see specifically that led to healthcare communication and led to the creation of a dose of truth?
Well, there are lots of people out there, advocates, who are trying to do a good job in educating the public about these complicated medical and health situations. I mean, there are entire portions of the US government and governments around the world that are dedicated to education. But the way that they get that education across is usually very dry. It's through reports and papers and pamphlets. And so, one of the studies that I was able to find was evaluating a comparison of an animated avatar giving information about colorectal cancer versus a pamphlet about it. And what they learned in the study is that high literacy people did pretty well learning from either one. They were happy to get the information by animation, and they were happy to get the information from reading the text. But low information healthcare consumers were terrible at consuming the information from reading, but they were able to absorb the same amount of information as the high literacy people from the animations. And that is the kind of research that we are basing our efforts on, that this is actually the best way of doing it. And you can look at some very interesting examples. So this is before your time, but when I was growing up, we had these little cartoons on Saturday mornings, which were known as Schoolhouse Rock. And I believe that they're still reasonably popular. You can go and find them on YouTube. And those were animations about things like grammar and math. And then when my kids were young, we used to watch Magic School Bus all the time, and that was a show, an animated show that spoke very well to children about very complicated subjects in science and medicine. So.
Mhm.
The idea that you can use that there are better tools out there than people are using, and we looked around and we could not find anyone who was using animation in an effective way, even though animation was potentially by far the best tool to use in this situation.
Thank you so much. And that's awesome. You were able to recognize a new avenue of sharing that information and recognizing why it wasn't already in practice. So, you've emphasized that the role of family physicians, pharmacists, nurses, and health educators as trusted messengers is imperative. So, how does this strategy shape the reach and credibility of your work?
Well, to start, I'd like to say that that is at what we call in the business world a push marketing strategy, where you have an idea and instead of trying to get something to go viral, you push it out through a distribution technique. And we know from talking to people in the medical professional world that they are dying to get a product like this because every person who walks in the door is liable to have their head filled with false ideas. But frankly, they don't have time to tutor these people on all of these subjects. And so what we're trying to do is to give them an option to be able to farm out this initial discussion to our product, to our machine, so that then the next time they speak to this patient, the patient will be more educated on any one of 100 or 1,000 different topics. Now, that's not to say that we don't want it to go viral. So we are going to try to take this, our library of videos, for example, and push them out on YouTube and on TikTok and on Instagram. And we will use whatever tools we have to make it go viral. But from what I've been told from people in the influencer world, that's an extraordinary difficult thing to do, and no one really knows what the underlying algorithm is. And so deconstructing the algorithm is not something that we're going to spend our time trying to do. But we're pretty convinced that by pushing this out through the healthcare professionals, that it has a chance to get to millions and millions of people in relatively short order. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go through things like medical societies. Like one of our advisors is the head of primary care research at the American Academy of Pediatrics. And the American Academy of Pediatrics is the umbrella organization for every pediatrician in the country. So we know that through the AAP, we will be able to get access to these pediatricians first to learn what are the best tools to get their attention and get our information out to them. And then finally, a conduit to every pediatrician. And there are other medical societies in all of the medical disciplines that we will be targeting one by one.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, now we'll talk a little bit about innovation trust and the future of healthcare. The World Health Organization has described today's information environment as infodemic. From your vantage point, how can technology help not only fight misinformation, but build long term trust in
Well, first, let
healthcare?
me say that misinformation is a problem in many spheres of life. I think, as I said earlier, that medical misinformation is the most pernicious because of the language problem, that most people don't even know what the words mean. So there's a need for all sorts of tools to combat misinformation in the world in general. But in terms of medical misinformation, it is, we really want to go back to the science of it and say, how do we educate people in complicated medical and scientific issues? It's really about the pedagogy that works best to get ideas across to people. And that's why we spent a year of research during our fellowship doing all the research on what are the best methods to get information across to people. We had our ideas about how we were going to do it, but we were going to change those ideas if the literature search did not support any of the ideas we had. Luckily for us, the literature search completely validated everything that we're doing and each step of it along the way.
Great, thank you. And we can see that AI is very central to your approach as well. What do you see as the greatest opportunities and the biggest responsibilities when deploying AI to shape healthcare communication?
So part one of the plan, so we look at what we're doing as a three-legged stool. So part one is the videos, which are the beginning of the education process. But they're really meant to whet someone's appetite, to raise a topic, do a little bit of teaching. But we're talking about 30 to 45-second videos, because other research has shown that when you're showing video product for educational purposes, the videos need to be two things. One is at the level of the viewers, what they want to see that they will be able to understand. So if it goes over their head, they're going to tune out. So that's number one. The second one is if it's too long, they're going to tune out because they're just not ready for that kind of time commitment. That's one of the reasons that TikTok and Instagram videos have become so popular and such a ubiquitous force in transmitting information, because it turns out that that style and that length of video is the one that the human brain likes the most. So to do that, what we want to do, and first of all, we want to keep this as a nonprofit because we think it's very, very important that we maintain trust with all of our users. And if we are trying to make money from them, we're going to lose that trust immediately. So we have to find very cost-effective ways of doing this. Now, to put things in perspective, using traditional animation tools, it costs about $1,000 a minute to generate videos. So if you wanted to create a 3-minute video about a particular topic, and we think that 3 minutes is about the maximum that you would ever want to do, that would be still $3,000 for every video. And then you would still have other post-production costs and other fees along the way. We believe that using AI video generation technology, we can do it for pennies. And therefore, we can do it with speed and at scale for almost no money. I believe I myself could generate 50 videos a week if I wanted to about various topics. Now, what are the AI implications of that? Well, first of all, the most important part of a video is the script. So we are going to be very careful in building our scripts, and we're going to base our scripts on validated information. So for example, I just created a couple of pilot videos a week ago about the HPV vaccine. And what I did was I used GPT to take a pamphlet from the CDC about HPV vaccinations. And I said, let's develop two scripts, one for parents and one for tweens being, preteens, about how to educate them in 45 seconds about this particular topic before we hand them over to the chatbot. And so when you look at the script is exactly what the CDC is saying about the HPV vaccine. So we're going to use public health experts and medical experts to vet all of our product. We are never going to be putting things out that are AI created that don't have the kind of oversight that we think is absolutely necessary. So that's on the video side. Then on the chatbot side, it gets even more of a problem because a general large language model is trained on all information, not just truthful information. And while they're getting better at parsing out what is truthful and what is not, the problem of hallucination still exists. So under no circumstances are we going to allow people to go directly to a native LLM to get answers. And our goal is to be building customized chatbots that we load with only validated medical information and guardrails around it, so it won't even be connected to the internet. So it will only have the data set that we program it with. And therefore, it cannot give any false information because it doesn't know any false information. And so these are the kinds of tools that we are building and the kind of tools that we're using to make sure that the technology, while extraordinarily powerful, is tamed and cannot give false information to people, making the situation worse.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. And we were able to see how the cost efficiency and the usage of AI was alternatively very helpful in the case of starting a dose of truth. So now we'll go on a little bit about your mentorship. Beyond your organizational work, in A Dose of Truth, you've collaborated with and mentored so many emerging leaders. What qualities do you think are most important for the next generation of innovators to develop?
Well, first of all, education comes first and foremost. And one of the things that I try to do, I like mentoring people from ages, say, call it 18 through 25. It's a very impressionable time. And so, for example, one young woman I was mentoring for a number of years, and I actually interviewed her when she was applying to college, and that's how we met. But we didn't really stay in close touch during her freshman year. And she made some bad choices about the courses to take, which not only hurt her GPA because she ended up not liking those courses, but she ended up changing her major. When she chose her major, she chose a completely different path, and therefore all the courses she had taken freshman year did not help her, and it limited her choices later on. Had I been there, I could have advised her on ways of thinking about it, given her a better overall university experience. So a lot of the mentorship is just it's teaching people about the things that they don't know that they don't know. It's the unknown unknowns that are always the problem. And for young people ages 18 to 25, there is so much that they don't know, and they don't even know what questions to ask to be able to learn the answers to those questions. And that's where I think people like me can come in, because we not only know the answers to their questions, but we know the questions themselves, and we can even raise the questions long before the young person is ever going to think of them. And so what we're effectively doing is we're protecting them. In fact, the word protege and mentorship and protege, they go hand in hand. Protege is the French form, the French word for to protect. It is one of the forms of speech of the verb to protect. And so you have to ask, what is a mentor protecting a protege from? And the answer is the things that they don't know that they don't know.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. And before we wrap up, I'd like to ask you a few reflective questions. What are some core principles that guide your life today?
I think the most important one is that to those who much is given, much is, what is the word, the phrase? To those who much is given, much is expected. And so I have been extraordinarily successful in, well, I've been very lucky in my life. And I think it comes first and foremost from my parents, who were fantastic parents, and they put me on the path that has taken me where I am today. May they both rest in peace. And then I've been lucky to have a string of mentors who did an amazing job of getting me to where I am today. And they found me, this started when I was a senior in high school. And people just, I guess they saw some potential in me, and they opened doors for me that I could never have opened on my own. And so now, one of the reasons I mentor young people is because I realized that I could never do anything to pay these mentors back myself. They didn't need anything from me. They didn't want anything from me other than to see me succeed. And so I think it is my absolute duty to give back to those who need the help like I did when I was their age. But that carries over to everything else in my life. And so I try to be a good steward of the world around me. I have two children, and I try to teach them all of these same values and how important it is to be your best self so that you can do the best for those around you. And I've never really thought about a quick and easy answer to this question, but it's just very important to take everything you've been given and find a way to use those tools and that experience to make the world around us a better place.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we can see why you were so interested in mentorship and guiding young entrepreneurs in this direction as well. So, looking ahead, going back to your organization, A Dose of Truth, how do you envision A Dose of Truth scaling across communities, cultures, and health topics?
Well, first of all, we have to build the team. Right now, we're a bunch of volunteers, and we need to bring more people on. Probably the next thing we need to do is to start raising some money. I'm in conversation with various academics about some of the work they've done. In fact, the group that did the seminal study on using a chatbot to combat conspiracy theories is getting funding from the Gates Foundation, and we are trying to come up with ways to collaborate. I'm going to try to use that as a way to get into the Gates Foundation discussion portal, I would say. And once we have some money, we're going to need to hire tech people to do some of the technical work. That's just not something. And I'm pretty good for someone my age at all these AI tools, but I am never going to be the one to be doing the coding to make these things a reality. So we have to build people while the senior people and all of the advisors are all volunteers. You can only go so far in a volunteer model. So we have to raise money. That would be somewhere, I don't know, to start, we would need $100,000, somewhere between $100,000 and $1 million to create this organization and to get the technology built. But once the technology is built, the underlying technology we're using, meaning the video generation software and the off-the-shelf LLMs, for example, they make the cost of doing business so low as to be inconsequential. Furthermore, whenever we create a video, we can translate it into 15 languages, and each new translation takes a total of about 2 minutes. And so all you do is you press the
Mhm.
translate button, and you pick the language, and you press generate, and it will generate a whole new video that looks just as good as the original, but completely in the new language. And by using the technology to create new avatars, what we want to do is we want to create a set of avatars who look like the users. So we want to have male avatars and female avatars and older ones and younger ones and ones of different ethnic backgrounds. The avatar we're using now is one that I created specifically for this purpose. And the prompt was
Mhm.
a professional medical woman in about approximately age 32, and she looks very trustworthy, and she is of Middle Eastern or Mediterranean descent. And the idea was that she would look like half the world. And she does, in fact, look like half the world,
Mhm.
but we would need to get even more avatars to be able to talk to people in their own language and with people who they can relate to. And of course, these are all cartoons, so it's easier to create a
Mhm.
cartoon who looks like all of these different types of people. But we want people to have that level of trust from the avatar who's talking to them. And in our first experiment with this, we showed some of our videos. I was actually a Spanish language version to a bunch of Spanish
Mhm.
Facebook influencers on the southwest side of Chicago who are working with the Latino communities. And they're working to do things like reduce vaccine hesitancy. And they saw our 30-second Spanish video, and they said that they really liked the whole vibe of the video, and they thought that it was trustworthy and believable. That's what we're going for.
Well, that's awesome. And we're so excited to see how a dose of truth can scale. The ideas in the forefront and the core and catering to the entire community in this current healthcare environment is very promising. So we're very excited what is to come. Michael, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with us today. Your work is redefining what health communication can look like when we lead to both truth and innovation. For those who would like to learn more about you, where can they find you
Right
or your
now, the
work
best
online?
place would be on LinkedIn, and I assume you can take my LinkedIn profile and post it. We have not yet built the website because once we build the website, we're going to try to incorporate a lot of the ideas that we're talking about now. And we're still working out exactly what that is going to look like. So we're holding off on creating the website just yet.
And then, Michael, what message would you like to share directly with the next generation of healthcare leaders?
Well, I'm thrilled that people like you are getting into the medical world because it's a complicated world. It's a world that is very difficult for many people to understand, but it is God's work. It is helping people stay healthy is about the most important thing that we can all do for one another. So public health is arguably even more important than medicine itself because you want to prevent illness, you want to prevent problems later on, and that is far more effective than treating the problems after they occur. So, for all of these high school students and college students who are learning all of the tenets of public health, they are learning the best way to build a future of making a difference in people's lives and from a health perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we are truly grateful to have had this conversation with you and to amplify the story of someone who's working to restore trust in health through innovation and collaboration in today's world. We hope today's episode sparked reflection and affirmed that youth voices and mentors together are essential to building a more just and responsive health system. If you're ready to take the next step, visit projectunitynfp.org to connect with changemakers, explore student led initiatives, or get involved with future episodes. I'm Hargun Sachar, and on behalf of Project Unity, thank you for listening. See you next time on On Call.